Hi everyone, Christina Werner here. Welcome to another video for SimonsStamp.com. Today I'm going to be using the Big Thanks Autumn stamp set that is included in the November 2020 card kit. This is our 6x8 stamp set with a really big image on it, and I'm going to be using that as well as the large thanks greeting. Cutting down some Arches cold press watercolor paper to 5x7. And then I'm using a grid transparency sheet to position my greeting stamps so that they're perfectly straight. And then I can close the door of my MISTI stamp positioning tool. I can then peel up that grid transparency sheet, and now I can do all my stamping. I'm using some VersaFine Onyx Black ink. And because I'm stamping directly onto watercolor paper, and this watercolor paper is very textured, I'm going to be stamping this a couple of times. Now, there are some ways to get a better impression. In this case, I didn't want to press too hard and have the small type on that bottom greeting. I didn't want to balloon out or squish that stamp and have it be more bold or whatever. If you've ever stamped clear stamps before, you probably know the feeling of pressing a little bit too hard and then your image sort of balloons out and it's not as sharp and crisp. I didn't want to do that, so I thought I would stop at this point and clean off my stamp, and eventually later I will fill in the letters on the thanks word, the ones that didn't stamp quite as well because they're so solid. I'm now going to stamp the very large image from the stamp set. It has sunflowers and leaves. And I actually stamped this a couple of times and used my elbow on the door of my MISTI to get really good pressure to get a great impression. So I did that for the top and bottom images. And then I taped my watercolor panel to a hardboard for some watercolor painting. For today's painting, I'm going to be using these watercolor markers. These are the Brush Marker Pros from Carine, and I'm going to be using just a variety of different colors. I picked out some more autumn shades. And the idea behind this painting is to put some underlayer of color and then just start building color on top. So these first colors that I'm applying to my project here, I want to be very pale and diluted. I don't want them to be super strong because with watercolor, you can't really take color away. So if you start with a too dark of a color from the beginning, you generally can't walk that back without a little bit of struggle to walk that back to a lighter shade. So I'm starting with very light shades. In order to use the markers as traditional watercolor medium, I put the watercolor onto a palette off to the side and then picked it up with a wet brush. I used a really large round brush for this initial underlayer of color. And then I came in and did the marker directly to the watercolor paper. This is going to put more intense color down, and I'm starting to build color on top of these areas. I also, in my mind, am thinking, okay, I want colors to overlap. I want there to be a good mixture of color. So I'm consciously putting colors right next to each other so that it gives them the opportunity to mix and give a really cool watercolor effect. It's very freeing to paint like this because I'm not really constrained by the lines of the stamp or the artwork. I'm just letting the color speak for itself at this moment. So I'm continuing to put on more and more color, kind of filling in those gaps, putting in some darker shades as well, but once you add water, they're diluted quite a bit. And I want to get to the point where I can start putting a little bit more detail on each one of these images to differentiate themselves from the images around it. So I'm starting with some orange on this marker and just adding orange to the kind of interior area of these petals. I want an impression of a little bit of shading, but I don't want it to be so fussy that I'm painting each one of these petals. I want this to be a little bit of a quicker project to put all together. Speaking of, it took me about 45 minutes to paint this entire piece since there are a lot of different things on it, but I think it was highly worth it, and I really love the multicolor effect that I achieved. For all the sunflowers, I used that orange marker just to add color, trying to differentiate it from the shapes around it. And for the center, I just did some dots of brown, added a little bit on there, and then spread that color out. So as far as the other leaves around that area, it was really interesting. I never really painted quite like this with these markers before, but as you add color on top, it's almost like it pushes the color underneath away. And so it has like an intensity of color that comes through. And I thought that was really, really beautiful. Now, I wasn't quite sure if I liked this look at first. I was envisioning in my mind something a little bit just different than how it turned out. But I decided to go ahead and keep moving forward with this project. At this point, I was already committed to it. I was in the thick of it and decided to not abandon it quite yet because I really wanted to see it through, and I'm glad I did. I hope you guys enjoy the final product like I do. I just continued painting, and at this point I thought, you know what, even if I don't end up using this particular version of this card, I've learned a lot about these markers and how they layer on top of each other, and even how, like this example, putting the orange on top of the purple, generally you would get a really ugly brown shade with that, but it wasn't so bad. And it's helping me to kind of step away from some of those rules that I have in my head about, don't put this color on top of this other color because it'll go brown. Sometimes you can bend those rules a little bit and you get really beautiful results. I'm adding more green to some of these leaves, just filling in all those areas, trying to make sure I've hit every single different leaf and shape with a little bit of color. Deepening some of those areas and giving it more depth. So I decided, like I decided earlier, I was going to fill in the letters. Now, I really wasn't thinking at this point that I'd actually use this card, so I was kind of just experimenting. So if I was going to fill it in with the black, I should have had that be my very, very last step. But I ended up going over the top and adding more color coming through here. I wanted just more color behind the words. Some of the black seeped out from the letters. Not a huge deal, especially since now I'm going to be adding some Finetec, which is this really beautiful pearlescent metallic palette. And I'm going to be doing gold splatters right over the top. Cut down a little strip of paper towel just to cover those words. Eventually, if you've seen the final version of this card, you know that I end up just putting gold paint over the thanks anyway, so this doesn't really matter, but I did need that secondary greeting, the second line, to be protected from the gold paint anyway, so it worked out really well. As far as splattering this gold paint onto my project, I put the paint on the edge of an acrylic block. You could use anything that has a sturdy edge, could just be even cardstock, and just flick off the edge, and that gives me a little bit more control over where those paint splatters go. And I wanted some bigger droplets too, so I ended up painting some on. I then removed my watercolor piece from my hardboard. I trimmed it down to get rid of any of the white from the masking tape. And then I painted the edges with that same gold color. I really wanted more gold accent on this. The gold splatter wasn't enough for me, and I wanted to add more gold. In fact, that is what I'm going to be doing next, which is I'm going to paint over the letters. Now, at first I thought I might be able to stamp that thanks again and use some embossing powder. So I tested out 2 different gold embossing powders from Simon, but none were quite the right shade of gold that I had used previously. So I decided to go ahead and chance it and just paint over the letters. So at this point, I still wasn't sure if this would be my final card. So I thought, you know what? If I paint these letters and it doesn't work out, that's okay. I've learned a lot on this project. I will still keep moving forward. So I'm painting these letters painstakingly slow, and I wanted to include this video footage so you know how slowly I was painting all of these letters with the smallest brush that I have in my stash. It's a size 0, and I just wanted to paint over these letters and get them that gold shade, mostly because I really just wanted more gold on this card design. So I was thinking in the back of my mind, if I'm not going to be using this card design, how will I change it if I make it again? And I thought, you know what? I'm going to use a gold from that Finetec palette that matches the gold embossing color a little bit more. And I'm going to emboss the large thanks from the beginning, and then I'll have all the golds match. So that's what I would do differently. So then I decided I kind of like the gold. I'm going to keep it and I'm going to finish my card. So I put some foam adhesive on the back and I adhered it to a black card front. The finished size of this card is 5x7. And I really am glad that I endured and pushed through because this turned out beautiful, a little bit unexpected. Thanks so much for watching today. You can get the stamp set I used today as well as everything else in the November 2020 card kit over at simonsystamp.com. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in another video very soon.